The second pod opened with the same soft hiss and another Velith emerged. This one was female with the same elegant features and glowing skin as Kainor. She looked around the chamber with confusion before her eyes settled on the human team. Kainor, she said in the same translated voice that somehow spoke directly to their minds. These cannot be the primitives we left behind. They have advanced too quickly. I know, Niravel, replied Kainor, stepping out of his pod. Something has changed. They should not have developed this far for another 50,000 years. The third pod was opening now, revealing a larger Velith with broader shoulders and a more serious expression. He looked at the humans with what seemed like suspicion. Torkane, said Kainor to the newly awakened being, we have a situation. Our children have grown beyond all expectations. Dr. Anjiwu, their computer specialist who had arrived with Li Hijin, was staring at the displays around the room. The panels were now showing much more information, responding to the presence of the awakened Velith. The technology here is incredible, she whispered to Kim Taemin. These systems are more advanced than anything we have on Earth, but I can almost understand how they work. Kainor heard her and smiled. That is because you carry our genetic legacy. The ability to understand complex systems is part of what we gave you. What do you mean, genetic legacy? Asked Li Hyajin, her scientific curiosity overcoming her shock. Niravel approached the humans, moving with a grace that seemed almost like floating. Long ago, our people traveled the galaxy, seeding life on suitable worlds. Earth was one of our most successful experiments. We found a planet with simple life forms, continued Kainor, primitive mammals with potential for intelligence. We combined our genetic material with theirs, creating a species that could survive on this world while carrying the spark of advanced consciousness. Torkine was studying the star map on the ceiling, which had changed to show Earth's current position in the galaxy. The timing is wrong. They should not have achieved space travel yet. Something has accelerated their development. Park So-young found her voice. You're saying humans are part alien? That we're your descendants? In a way, yes, said Niravel gently. Your ancestors were enhanced with Velith traits, intelligence, adaptability, curiosity, and the drive to explore and create. We hoped that one day when you were ready, you would join us among the stars. Choi Min-ho was looking at the readings on his instruments. The ship is sending out signals now. Some kind of communication array has activated. Kainor's expression became worried. That is unfortunate. The signals will help us contact other Velith survivors, but they may also be detected by our enemies. What enemies? Asked Kim Taemin. What kind of war were you fighting? The three Velith exchanged glances and Torkane spoke for the first time. They call themselves the Devourers. They are machines not born but built. Their purpose is to consume all organic life in the galaxy and convert it into energy for their expansion. We fought them for thousands of years, added Niravel. They destroy entire worlds, leaving nothing but dead rock behind. They see organic life as inefficient and wasteful. Kainor walked to one of the control panels and gestured over it. The display changed to show images that made the humans gasp. Planets covered in metal structures, vast fleets of angular ships, creatures that looked like mechanical spiders the size of buildings. We were losing the war, Kainor continued. Our people were scattered across the galaxy, hiding on remote worlds like Earth. This ship was carrying the last of our genetic archives and terraforming equipment when we crashed here. Li Dongwu was studying the images of the mechanical enemies. How do you fight something like that? They look unstoppable. They are nearly unstoppable, said Torkane grimly. They adapt to any weapon we use against them. They learn from every battle and become stronger. That is why we went into stasis. To wait until our seeded species had grown strong enough to help us find a new solution. Anjiwu had connected her laptop to one of the ship's interfaces and was downloading information. I'm getting massive amounts of data here. Star charts, technology, blueprints, historical records. How is this possible? Our systems shouldn't be compatible. Another gift from our genetic legacy, explained Niravel. We designed your species to be able to interface with our technology, but you have developed far beyond what we expected. The ship's systems hummed with increasing activity. New displays activated around the chamber, showing views of space and technical readouts that changed too quickly for the humans to follow. The communication array is fully active now, reported Kainor, his voice tense. I am receiving signals from other Velith outposts across the galaxy. Some are still hidden, but many have been discovered and destroyed. Lee Hai-jin was studying the biological data that flowed across the screens. These genetic charts are fascinating. I can see the Velith modifications in human DNA, but there's something else. Humans have developed traits that aren't in the original Velith genome. Show us, said Niravel, moving to look at the data. The display changed to show a complex genetic comparison. The Velith DNA was elegant and efficient, but human DNA was more chaotic, with unexpected connections and redundancies. Your species has evolved in ways we never anticipated, said Kainor with wonder. You have developed new capabilities we never possessed. What kind of capabilities? Asked Park So-young. Torkane was now studying the humans with new interest. Creativity beyond logic. The ability to find solutions that should not work but do. Emotional connections that give strength instead of weakness. We Velith are logical and efficient, explained Niravel. But you humans have learned to be illogical and inefficient in ways that sometimes produce better results than pure logic. The chamber suddenly filled with an urgent alarm sound. The displays around the room turned red and new information flooded the screens. What's happening? Asked Kim Taemin. Kainor's face was pale as he read the information. Our awakening signal has been detected. The Devourers have triangulated our position. A scout fleet is already moving toward this sector of the galaxy. How long do we have? Asked Choi Min-ho. Their fastest ships could reach Earth in 5 of your years, replied Torkine. Perhaps 6 if they stop to investigate other signals along the way. An Ji-woo looked up from her computer interface. I've been analyzing their ship designs from your database. These Devourers are incredibly advanced, but their technology follows very predictable patterns. They're purely logical machines. That is correct, said Kainor. They cannot adapt to truly random or chaotic responses. But that knowledge never helped us because Velith thinking is also logical and predictable. But human thinking isn't, said Park So-young, understanding beginning to dawn in her voice. Niravel nodded slowly. Your species may be able to fight them in ways we never could, but you will need our technology and knowledge to have any chance of survival. Lee Dongwoo was looking at the star charts showing the approaching enemy fleet. 5 years to prepare for a war against machines that have conquered most of the galaxy. That doesn't seem like enough time. It will have to be, said Kim Taemin firmly. We need to contact Earth's governments and prepare our defenses. No, said Torkane sharply. If your leaders learn of this threat, they will panic and fight each other instead of the real enemy. We have seen this happen on other worlds. Then what do you suggest? Asked Kim Taemin. Kainor looked at each of the humans in turn. We begin by awakening the dormant abilities in your genetic code. Then we teach you to use our technology, and then we hope that human creativity can find a solution that pure Velith logic could not. The ship around them hummed with power, as ancient systems came fully online, preparing for the challenge ahead. 2 weeks had passed since the first awakening, and the ship had become a hive of activity. The Velith had expected to teach the humans about advanced technology and warfare. Instead, they found themselves learning lessons they had never imagined. Kim Taemin stood in the ship's main planning chamber, looking at holographic displays that showed the approaching Devourer fleet. The enemy ships were still years away, but their path toward Earth was clear and inevitable. Traditional Velith strategy would be to evacuate, said Kainor, studying the same displays. Find another world to hide on and hope the Devourers lose interest. But you've been running for millions of years, replied Kim Taemin. How has that worked out? The 3 Velith exchanged uncomfortable glances. Their long retreat had led them to this moment, hiding on a primitive world while their enemies grew stronger. We could take some humans with us, suggested Niravel. Preserve your species on distant worlds while Earth is consumed. No, said Park So-young firmly. Earth is our home. If we're going to fight, we fight here. Lee Hee-jin had been working with the ship's biological systems, studying the genetic enhancements that were still spreading through the human team. I've been thinking about our advantages, she said. The Devourers are pure logic machines. They've never encountered anything truly chaotic. What are you suggesting? Asked Torkane. We turn Earth into the biggest chaos generator in the galaxy, replied Choi Min-ho, understanding her direction. We don't try to beat them with superior technology. We beat them with superior unpredictability. An Ji-woo had been interfacing with the ship's databases, downloading thousands of years of Devourer combat data. I've been studying their attack patterns. Every time they encounter a new defensive system, they analyze it, adapt to it, and overcome it within days. But, added Li Dongwu, what if we created defenses that adapted faster than they could analyze them? What if our systems changed randomly, not based on logic but on pure chaos? The Velith looked uncomfortable with this concept.
Random changes could make your defenses weaker, said Kainor.
You might accidentally create vulnerabilities. Or we might accidentally create something that works better than anything we planned, countered Kim Taemin. That's how humans have always survived, by trying things that shouldn't work but do. Over the following days, they began developing what Li Hijin called the human solution. Instead of building perfect defenses, they would build chaotic ones. Instead of logical weapons, they would create random ones. Instead of ordered strategies, they would use planned chaos. The first step is awakening human potential worldwide, explained Park So-young as she worked with Niravel on genetic enhancement protocols. If we're going to defend Earth, we need more than just our small team. But how do we convince world governments to cooperate without causing panic? Asked An Ji-woo. Kim Taemin had been thinking about this problem for days. We don't tell them about the invasion. We tell them about the opportunity. He activated the ship's communication systems and began drafting a message that would change everything. To all nations of Earth, we have discovered technology that will revolutionize human civilization. This is not a threat, but an invitation to join the galactic community. You want to reveal everything? Asked Kainor, surprised. Humans work best when they're working together toward a common goal, replied Kim Taemin. If we try to prepare in secret, we'll fail. If we give them hope and purpose, they'll accomplish the impossible. The message was carefully crafted to reveal the existence of the Velith and their technology without mentioning the immediate threat. Instead, it focused on the positive aspects: enhanced human abilities, advanced technology, and the possibility of exploring the stars. Choi Min-ho had been working on the defense systems, creating weapons that changed their behavior randomly. I've built a missile system that never fires the same way twice. Each missile chooses its own target and attack method based on chaos algorithms. This violates every principle of effective weapons design, said Torkane. But he was watching the test results with fascination, yet it works remarkably well. Because the missiles are unpredictable, the enemy can't adapt to them, explained Choi Min-ho. By the time they figure out one missile's behavior, the next one is completely different. Li Dongwu had taken this concept even further. I've been working on self-modifying technology. Our defenses will literally evolve in real time, changing faster than any logical system can track. He showed them a force field generator that rebuilt itself every few minutes, always in a slightly different configuration. The Devourers expect technology to be stable and consistent. This technology is deliberately unstable and inconsistent. The breakthrough came when Li Haijin discovered something unexpected in the human genetic enhancements. The dormant Velith genes aren't just activating, she reported excitedly. They're combining with human creativity to produce abilities that neither species had before. She demonstrated by connecting directly with the ship's systems and making them respond to her emotions rather than her thoughts. When she felt happy, the ship's lights became warmer. When she felt determined, the engines ran more efficiently. Emotion-based technology, whispered Niravel in amazement. We never considered such a thing. Because you think emotions are inefficient, said Li Haijin. But emotions are just another form of information. And they're information that machines can't process logically. As word of their discovery spread across Earth, the response was beyond anything they had hoped for. Instead of panic or disbelief, humanity reacted with characteristic determination and curiosity. Scientists, engineers, artists, and ordinary people from every nation volunteered to help. The genetic enhancement process was refined and made safe for mass distribution. Within months, millions of humans had awakened their dormant abilities. But each person's enhancement was unique, shaped by their individual personality and experiences. Artists created weapons that were also sculptures, beautiful but deadly. Musicians composed battle songs that disrupted electronic systems. Engineers built machines that functioned on principles of organized chaos. This is incredible, said Kainor, watching reports from around the globe. Your species is turning warfare into an art form. We're not just fighting to survive, explained Kim Taemin. We're fighting to protect the right to be human. That makes all the difference. The final component of the human solution came from an unexpected source. Park So-young had been studying the Devourer's psychology, trying to understand how machine intelligence functioned. They're not just logical, she realized. They're perfectly logical. They can't make intuitive leaps or accept paradoxes. If we present them with situations that have no logical solution, they'll freeze up trying to process them. Working with An Ji-woo, she began creating what they called logic traps, scenarios designed to overwhelm machine intelligence with impossible contradictions. We're going to make them think themselves to death, she explained with a smile. By the time the Devourer scout fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system, Earth was ready for them. But it was ready in ways that no logical mind could have anticipated. The planet bristled with defenses that made no sense, weapons that fired randomly, shields that changed constantly, and strategies that violated every principle of military logic. Human defenders used emotion-driven technology that responded to feelings rather than programming. And at the center of it all was the message that Kim Tae-min broadcast to hidden Velith outposts across the galaxy. To all survivors of the ancient war, this is Earth calling. The children you scattered across the stars have grown up. We've learned things you never taught us. How to hope when hope is impossible. How to laugh in the face of fear, and how to create order from chaos. The Devourers are coming, but we're not running anymore. Come home. Come and see what your legacy has become. Come and help us teach the galaxy that some things are worth fighting for, no matter what the odds. The ship's communication array pulsed with power as the message spread across interstellar space. In the distance, other signals began responding. Velith survivors emerging from hiding, drawn by the impossible promise of victory. Kainor stood beside Kim Tae-min as they watched the first Devourer ships enter the solar system, only to immediately encounter defenses that made no logical sense. We have preserved life across the galaxy for millions of years, the ancient Velith said quietly. But you humans have done something we never could. What's that? Asked Kim Tae-min. You have made it worth preserving, replied Kainor, watching human defenders laugh and sing as they prepared for the greatest battle in galactic history. In the depths of space, the Devourer machines tried to analyze the chaotic defenses they encountered and found themselves facing something their perfect logic could not comprehend. The deliberately imperfect, beautifully flawed and utterly unpredictable creativity of humanity. The war for the galaxy was about to begin, but for the first time in millions of years, the machines were not certain of victory. Over the next 3 days, the Velith began testing the human team in ways that surprised everyone. The ship's systems had been modified to create training chambers and testing areas that appeared as if by magic from walls that had seemed solid before. The ship is actually much larger than we first thought, explained Niravel as she led Lee Hyojin through a corridor that hadn't existed the day before. Velith technology allows structures to reshape themselves based on need. In one of the new chambers, Kainor was working with An Ji-woo on interface techniques. Try to connect with the system without using your computer, he instructed. Let your mind link directly with the ship's consciousness. I don't understand how that's possible, An Ji-woo replied. But she placed her hands on the glowing panel as instructed. Immediately, information flooded into her mind. Not words or images, but pure understanding of how the ship's systems worked. She gasped and pulled her hands away. I could feel the ship thinking, she said in amazement. It's not just a machine. It's actually alive in some way. All advanced Velith technology is biomechanical, explained Kainor. We grow our ships and tools rather than build them. They develop their own form of consciousness over time. In another chamber, Torkine was testing the humans' problem-solving abilities with scenarios that had defeated Velith strategists for centuries. He presented Park So-young with a holographic display showing a Devourer attack pattern. This formation has never been successfully countered, he said. The enemy ships adapt to any logical response we can devise. Park So-young studied the display for only a few minutes before pointing to what looked like empty space. What if you don't attack the ships at all? What if you attack there instead? There is nothing there, said Torkane, confused. Exactly. But if you created something there, an explosion, a gravity field, anything unexpected, it would force them to break formation to investigate. They're machines, so they have to respond to new data. Torcane stared at the display as her suggestion played out in the simulation. The Devourer formation collapsed as the ships moved to investigate the anomaly, leaving them vulnerable to conventional attacks. "This should not work," he muttered. "But it does work. How did you see the solution?" "I don't know," Park So-young admitted. "It just seemed obvious." Meanwhile, Lee Dongwoo was in the ship's engineering section with Niravel, looking at damaged components that had been broken for 10,000 years. "Our repair systems failed during the crash," Niravel explained. "These quantum flux regulators cannot be fixed with current Velith technology." Lee Dongwoo examined the strange devices, then disappeared back to their surface camp. He returned an hour later with duct tape, wire, and a small device from their drilling equipment. "This is primitive human technology," he said, beginning to connect the components in ways that made Niravel's eyes widen. But sometimes primitive solutions work better than advanced ones. Within minutes, the quantum flux regulators were humming with power again. The jury-rigged repair not only worked, but it actually improved the efficiency of the system. "This is impossible," whispered Niravel. "Your primitive materials should not be compatible with our quantum-level technology. Sometimes the impossible is just another word for, we haven't figured it out yet," said Lee Dongwoo with a grin. The most surprising discovery came when Choi Min-ho was studying the ship's defensive systems. The Velith weapons were powerful but straightforward: energy beams, force fields, and missile systems that followed predictable patterns. "Your weapons are very advanced," he told Kainor, "but they're too perfect. They always do exactly what they're supposed to do." "What is wrong with that?" asked Kainor. "Nothing, except that your enemies expect weapons to be perfect. What if we made weapons that were deliberately imperfect? That sometimes missed their targets but created unexpected effects." Choi Min-ho began modifying one of the weapon systems, introducing random variables and chaos factors that made the Velith uncomfortable. When he test-fired the modified weapon, it completely missed its target, but created a feedback pulse that disabled 3 other targets that hadn't even been aimed at. "The randomness creates unpredictable secondary effects," he explained. "An enemy that adapts to logical attacks would have no defense against illogical ones." But the discovery that amazed the Velith most came from Kim Tae-min. He had been studying the historical records of the war against the Devourers, looking for patterns in the battles. "Every time you fought them, you tried to save as many people as possible," he observed to the 3 Velith. "You always retreated when casualties got too high." "Of course," said Niravel. "Life is precious. We could not sacrifice our people unnecessarily." "But that's exactly what the Devourers expect you to do," Kim Tae-min replied. "They use your compassion against you. They know you'll retreat to save lives, so they design their attacks to force you into that choice." He showed them a simulation where human tactics were applied to Velith technology. "Humans have learned to take calculated risks. Sometimes we sacrifice a few to save many. It's not logical, but it's effective." The Velith were disturbed by this concept, but they couldn't argue with the results. Human military tactics, when combined with Velith technology, produced victory scenarios that pure Velith strategy had never achieved. Lee Hyejin made the most profound discovery of all. While studying the genetic enhancement process, she found something unexpected in the human team's DNA. "The dormant Velith genes are activating," she reported excitedly, "but they're not activating the way they should. They're combining with purely human traits to create something new." She showed them the test results. "Kainor, your people gave humans intelligence and curiosity, but humans developed something else on their own: hope and stubborn determination." "I do not understand," said Kainor. "Velith logic says that when a situation is hopeless, you should retreat and find a better opportunity. Human logic says that when a situation is hopeless, you should try harder." The genetic enhancement was working on all of the humans, but not in ways the Velith had expected. Instead of becoming more like Velith, the humans were becoming more essentially human, but with enhanced abilities. An Jiwoo found she could interface with multiple ship systems simultaneously, but she used the connection to play music through the ship's communication array. The Velith had never thought to use their technology for art. Lee Dongwoo's enhanced understanding of technology led him to create tools that served multiple purposes. He built devices that were weapons, repair tools, and cooking equipment all at the same time. The Velith found this chaos of functions disturbing but remarkably efficient. Park So-young's enhanced pattern recognition let her see solutions that violated every rule of logic, but worked anyway. She began teaching the ship's computer systems to think in contradictory ways. On the third evening, as they sat around a heater outside the ship, Torkine approached Kim Tae-min with a troubled expression. "We made a mistake," the Velith warrior said quietly. "We assumed that evolution would make you more like us. Instead, you have become more perfectly yourselves. Is that bad?" asked Kim Tae-min. "For the Devourers it may be fatal," replied Torkine. "They have spent millions of years learning to defeat logic and order. They have no defense against chaos and hope." Niravel joined them, looking up at the stars that were beginning to appear in the Arctic sky. "We preserved life across the galaxy for millions of years. But you humans have learned something we never could." "What's that?" asked Kim Tae-min. "You have learned to make life worth living," she said softly. "We save civilizations, but you create cultures. We preserve species, but you create communities. We maintain order, but you create joy." As if summoned by her words, Lee Dongwoo's modified speakers began playing music from his phone through the ship's systems. The haunting melody of a Korean folk song drifted across the ice, mixing human emotion with alien technology. For the first time in millions of years, the Velith began to understand what they had been fighting to preserve. Not just life, but the possibility of happiness. "Perhaps," said Kainor, listening to the music, "our children are ready to teach the teachers." The corridor inside the alien ship stretched ahead of them like a tunnel made of light and shadow. The walls pulsed with soft colors that shifted from blue to green to purple as the team walked deeper inside. Their footsteps made almost no sound on the strange floor material. "These symbols are moving," whispered Park So-young, running her hand along the wall. The flowing patterns seemed to respond to her touch, brightening and shifting into new shapes. "It's like the ship is alive." Dr. Lee Hai-jin, their biologist who had joined them that morning, was taking readings with her scanner. "The electromagnetic activity is incredible. These walls are definitely organic in some way, but they're also technological. I've never seen anything like it." Kim Tae-min led the group forward, his flashlight cutting through the gentle glow that filled the ship. The corridor curved gradually to the right, and he could see that it opened into a larger space ahead. "The air feels different in here," said Choi Min-ho. "Cleaner somehow, like it's being filtered and refreshed." They emerged into a vast central chamber that took their breath away. The room was circular and at least 30 meters across. The ceiling curved high above them, covered in what looked like a map of the stars. Thousands of tiny lights twinkled in patterns that slowly moved and changed. "It's beautiful," said Lee Hai-jin softly. The walls were covered in panels that glowed with information they couldn't read. Images flowed across the surfaces, pictures of planets, strange creatures, and star systems that looked nothing like Earth's solar system. Numbers and symbols changed constantly, as if the ship was monitoring things across vast distances. In the center of the room stood 3 tall structures that looked like crystal coffins. Each one was about the size of a human, filled with a liquid that glowed with soft light. Dark shapes floated inside the liquid, but the team couldn't see them clearly through the bright fluid. "Those look like sleeping pods," said Park So-young, approaching one of the structures carefully. "There's something inside each one." Lee Dongwoo was examining the control panels around the room. "These interfaces are amazing. They seem to respond to hand movements and touch. Look at this." He waved his hand near one of the panels and it lit up with new information. The symbols rearranged themselves and suddenly images appeared showing the outside of the ship buried in ice. The display showed them their own camp above ground. "It's been watching us," said Kim Tae-min with amazement. "The ship knows we're here." Choi Min-ho was studying the star map on the ceiling. "These constellations don't match anything in our sky. Some of these star patterns look familiar, but they're in the wrong positions, like they're showing the galaxy from a different time or place." The liquid in the sleeping pods began to glow brighter as they explored the room. Soft sounds came from inside the pods like the sound of a heartbeat or breathing. "Whatever's in there is alive," said Lee Hai-jin, holding her scanner near the closest pod. "The readings show complex brain activity and life signs, but the physiology is unlike anything on Earth." Park So-young noticed that one of the control panels near the pods was pulsing with urgent light. The symbols on it were different from the others, more complex and arranged in patterns that seemed important. "This panel looks like it controls the sleeping pods," she said. "I think it's trying to tell us something." As she reached toward the glowing panel, the symbols suddenly changed. Now they showed simple pictures. A human figure approaching the pod, the liquid draining away, and the shape inside sitting up. "It's showing us how to wake them up," said Kim Tae-min. "The question is, should we?" Before anyone could answer, Lee Hai-jin called out from across the room. "You need to see this. I found something incredible." She was standing near a wall panel that showed biological information. The images flowing across it showed human DNA, but also something else mixed with it. The patterns were clearly different but connected. "These readings," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "They're showing human genetic information, but also genetic patterns I don't recognize. It's like they're comparing the two." The ship suddenly filled with new sounds. A gentle humming came from the walls, and the light from the sleeping pods grew much brighter. The control panel that Park So-young had been examining began to flash with urgent symbols. "Something's happening," said Choi Min-ho, watching his instruments react to changes in the ship's energy levels. "Power levels are increasing throughout the vessel." One of the sleeping pods made a soft clicking sound. The liquid inside began to drain away, revealing the dark shape floating within. As the fluid level dropped, they could see it more clearly. It was humanoid, but clearly not human. The being was tall and thin, with pale skin that seemed to glow slightly. Its face was elegant and angular, with large eyes that were still closed. It wore a simple garment that looked like it was made from the same material as the ship itself. "It's waking up," whispered Lee Dong-woo. The liquid finished draining, and the front of the pod opened with a soft hiss. The being inside took a deep breath and slowly opened its eyes. They were large and dark, with flecks of silver that seemed to shine with their own light. For a moment, the being just looked at them without moving. Its gaze moved from person to person, studying each of the humans with careful attention. There was intelligence in those eyes and something else, surprise. Then the being spoke. The words weren't in any human language, but somehow they could understand the meaning. It was as if the ship itself was translating the words directly into their minds. "You are not who we expected," the being said, its voice carrying wonder and confusion. "How long have we been sleeping?" Kim Tae-min stepped forward slowly, his hands raised to show he meant no harm. "We found your ship buried in ice. You've been sleeping for about 10,000 years. The being's eyes widened. It sat up carefully in the pod, movements graceful despite having been asleep for so long. 10,000 years? That is far longer than planned. It looked at each of the humans again, studying their faces and equipment. "You have grown so much. When we left you, you were still living in caves and hunting with simple tools. Now you have complex technology and reach into the ice to find us. You know about humans?" asked Park So-young. "You've met our species before?" The being smiled, an expression that looked familiar despite its alien features.
Met you?
"We created you." The chamber fell silent except for the gentle humming of the ship's systems. The humans stared at the being, trying to understand what they had just heard. "My name is Kai-Nor," the being continued. "I am Velith, and this is our ship. We have been waiting for our children to grow strong enough to help us, but you have grown far beyond what we ever imagined possible." As if responding to Kai-Nor's awakening, the other two pods began to drain their liquid as well. More sounds echoed through the ship as systems that had been quiet for millennia started to come back to life. "Help you with what?" asked Kim Tae-min. Kai-Nor's expression grew serious. "The war that drove us here has not ended. Our enemies are still coming, and now they will be able to find Earth. We need to prepare for their arrival." The ship around them hummed with increasing energy as it fully awakened from its long sleep. The wind howled across the endless white landscape of the Siberian Arctic. Dr. Kim Tae-min pulled his heavy coat tighter as he watched his team set up the drilling equipment. The temperature was minus 40 degrees, but something much more interesting than the cold had brought them here. 3 weeks ago, his satellite readings had shown something impossible buried deep under the ice. The electromagnetic signals were unlike anything natural on Earth. They pulsed in perfect patterns, as if something was sending a message from beneath 10,000 years of frozen water. "The thermal drill is ready," called Lee Dong-woo from beside the massive machine. Steam rose from the heated metal as it prepared to cut through the ancient ice. "Are you sure about this location, Tae-min?" Kim Tae-min checked his instruments one more time. The readings were stronger here than anywhere else. Whatever lay beneath the ice was directly below them. "This is the spot. Start drilling." Dr. Park So-young, their expert on ancient artifacts, stood nearby with her scanning equipment. She had flown in from Seoul when she heard about the strange signals. If this is what I think it might be, we could be looking at the discovery of the century. The drill bit into the ice with a loud grinding sound. Chunks of frozen water flew in all directions as the machine worked its way down. Hour after hour, they took turns operating the equipment. The ice here was harder than normal, almost like it had been frozen in a different way. 20 feet down, announced Lee Dong-woo, wiping sweat from his forehead despite the cold. The ice is getting strange. Look at this. He held up a piece of ice that had come from the drill. Instead of being clear or white, it had a slight blue glow to it. The ice felt warm to the touch, which should have been impossible. Dr. Choi Min-ho, their physicist, took the sample and examined it closely. The molecular structure is completely normal, but there are traces of unknown particles mixed in. Something has been affecting this ice for thousands of years. They continued drilling through the night, taking shifts to keep warm in their heated tent. By morning, they had gone down 60 feet, and the electromagnetic readings were getting stronger. The equipment began to make strange noises as if it was picking up signals from somewhere nearby. "Wait," said Park So-young, staring at her scanner. "Something's different." The drill just hit something solid. They all gathered around the hole they had made in the ice. Lee Dong-woo lowered a camera down on a long cable. The small screen showed ice walls reflecting the camera's light. Then suddenly the light hit something that reflected it back like a mirror. "That's metal," whispered Choi Min-ho. "But not any metal I've ever seen." The surface was perfectly smooth and black like polished stone. Strange patterns covered it, lines and shapes that seemed to move when the camera light hit them. The patterns looked like writing, but not from any language on Earth. "We need to clear more ice," said Kim Tae-min. "We need to see how big this thing is." They worked for 3 more days, melting ice and clearing debris. Slowly, the shape of their discovery became clear. It was huge, at least 200 meters long and 50 meters wide. The surface was covered in the same strange patterns, and some areas seemed to glow with a faint inner light. "It's a ship," said Park So-young, her voice filled with wonder. "An actual spaceship." The ship was beautiful in a terrifying way. Its smooth curves looked like they had been grown rather than built. No sharp edges or rough surfaces could be seen anywhere. It looked like it had been designed by someone who understood things about science that humans had never learned. "The readings are off the charts," reported Choi Min-ho. "There's definitely power running through this thing." After 10,000 years under the ice, it's still active. Lee Dong-woo was examining the surface with his tools. "The material is incredible. It's harder than diamond, but lighter than aluminum. I can't even scratch it with our best cutting tools." As they studied the ship, Kim Tae-min noticed something important. One section of the hull looked different from the rest. The patterns there were brighter, and the surface seemed to pulse gently. "I think that might be a door," he said, pointing to the area. Park So-young brought her equipment closer to scan the surface. As soon as her scanner touched the hull, the patterns around it began to glow brighter. Lines of light spread out from the contact point like water ripples. "It's responding to us," she said, stepping back in surprise. The glow spread across the entire section of hull. Then, with a soft sound like air being released, a rectangular section of the surface simply vanished. Where solid metal had been a moment before, there was now an opening large enough for a person to walk through. Cool air flowed out of the opening, carrying strange smells that reminded them of ozone and flowers. Lights automatically turned on inside the ship, revealing a corridor with walls covered in the same flowing patterns they had seen outside. "The atmosphere is breathable," said Choi Min-ho, checking his instruments. "Mostly nitrogen and oxygen, with some gases I can't identify." They stood at the entrance to the ship, looking into the unknown. Everything about it was alien, yet somehow beautiful. The wall seemed to pulse gently with life, and the air itself felt different, charged with possibility. "We should call for backup," said Lee Dong-woo. "This is beyond anything our small team can handle." "Not yet," replied Kim Tae-min. "If we report this now, governments will take over. We'll never get another chance to explore it ourselves. Let's do a quick look inside first." Park So-young was already putting on her equipment pack. "I've been studying ancient mysteries my whole life. I'm not walking away from the biggest one ever discovered." One by one, they entered the alien ship. Their footsteps echoed softly in the corridor as they walked deeper into the vessel. Behind them, the entrance remained open, showing the white Arctic landscape they had left behind. Inside the ship, strange symbols glowed on the walls around them. The air hummed with invisible energy, and they could feel that they were no longer alone in the universe. They had found something that would change everything humans thought they knew about life, space and their place in the galaxy, but they had no idea that their discovery would soon wake something that had been sleeping for 10,000 years.